Now, this week we have examined the events in the Jubilee Party and particularly the options that Deputy President William Ruto has, as undoubtedly a siege continues against him. Now, we will not purport to advise the DP on this program, but simply want to make some observations and points to consider. And the first is this, that as you have seen on tonight's show and in our interview with the Wasingishu woman rep, it remains clear that there is some kind of denial on the part of politicians who are allied to the deputy president about what is actually happening as the struggle for the party's leadership continues. The DP's allies continue with this narrative that theirs is a struggle for party democracy and values and against outsiders who are trying to take control of Jubilee. But the truth is much simpler. Much as the deputy president has said that his alliance with President Kenyatta was not a marriage, it was undoubtedly a political covenant that was meant to deliver kumi ya Kenyatta na kumi ya Ruto. And like in any marriage or covenant, sometimes they are broken. And when they are broken, it is important to recognize that they are broken. Now, we cannot tell you why exactly this covenant fell apart. For whatever reason, President Kenyatta has chosen a new political ally in Raila Odinga. Perhaps politically, according to him, the DP could only have gotten him so far, but governing for the last term required another alliance. Or perhaps for some reason, the deputy president lost the president's confidence, maybe when he publicly undermined the handshake and the pact for political cooperation with Raila, even when the president had made a decision to work with him. Or maybe the DP in some ways overplayed his hand and acted as a co-president instead of a deputy president and forgot that there is only one number one. Now, we are not quite certain why things fell apart, but what is certain is that they have fallen apart. Now, this is not open to debate. President Kenyatta has decided against his deputy. Choose whichever reason you want for this, but what you cannot choose is that is the bottom line. Now, President Kenyatta is out of the marriage covenant, and it appears that he is out for good. And we want to pause there and to make the following clarification. Now, we are not saying that this is good or bad or moral or not. We are neither applauding this move or booing it. We are simply observing it and stating things as they are. It is, as anyone can imagine, deeply upsetting for the deputy president and his supporters who believed that they had not just a partnership, but a future presidency already in the bag. But this is politics. That's the game, and like it or not, for better or worse, President Kenyatta has made his move. Now, history will judge whether it was a masterstroke on his part or the biggest political mistake that Kenyatta has ever made. But again, whatever it is done. Now, in reporting these events that have followed, we have often debated why the DP has stayed where he is clearly not wanted. Why face the humiliation? Why insist that all is well when it clearly isn't? Why try to paint an image of togetherness where really there is none? How does it benefit the deputy president or those who support him? What is there to protect? And we hypothesize that this has been the case because for many of his political allies, they have thought, mistakenly so, that they could pressure the president back into the alliance with the deputy. Another case of living in the past and not accepting reality. But if they were to accept the ugly truth, what then would DP's options be? Now, staying to fight for Jubilee is an option, and we've just heard that that's an option they'll go for, but it's probably not a very good one. It would be loud and messy and long drawn out. And yes, maybe perhaps somehow the DP could take Jubilee. But after such a war, what kind of Jubilee would he be left with? The heart of Jubilee, the core of it, was not party structures and organs and a party constitution. No. What made Jubilee a force in politics was the partnership, the marriage, the cooperation of President Kenyatta and his deputy. And without the president, there is no Jubilee in real terms. It loses its luster, its power, its appeal. You may as well call it by any other name, but it won't be Jubilee. So in essence, a fight for Jubilee's control is to win nothing. But remember David Murabe's words. Murabe has often said that they can leave the party to Ruto and form another. And that is a real likelihood. A super lineup of some 5 or 6 like-minded politicians representing the country is on the horizon with the same kind of branding and catchy jingles and those Terrible pictures of politicians kissing babies. And if the Stop Ruto team decides to leave the party to Ruto without a fight, what glory or mileage would the DP get? None. Now we observe only one way out for the DP, and it is this. Like we have said earlier, stop fighting reality. Living in the real world, as horrible as it is, frees you to make real decisions that can work now in the present circumstances, not choices based on the past, no matter how rosy that past was. And we think that ultimately the deputy president will reach this conclusion. He will come to the wisdom to let the president be the president and to do what he has decided to do. And again, this is not about right or wrong. It's just about politics, understanding that there can be only one head, not two, one president at a time. The wisdom that if you want to lead, you must learn to follow. The wisdom that leadership and direction for the Jubilee Party does not rest on its members, it rests on the party leader. And let the president forge the path for himself, as the burden of it all, including the nation, ultimately rests on only his shoulders. It will be President Kenyatta who will bear the ultimate responsibility for his decision. And we believe that this is something the president is well aware of and has carefully considered in making such a radical political position, such as to end a covenant that was made before the entire nation in order to embrace a new ally at this time. But finally, a thought on leadership as we try to perceive the future of Jubilee and that of the deputy president. We have been reminded of the larger body of literature that was used to guide potential leaders, known as mirrors for princes. Now, in this old wisdom that was used in the European world, there was often guidance from kings or courtiers and others on how to make it to the top. And in making our final observation, and because it is Sunday, we will even paint pictures from scripture and consider the example of a shepherd boy named David, who would ultimately become king. Now, not even David's own father thought him worthy enough of leadership, and his predecessor, King Saul, made life hell for David. But because leadership was his, David became king in spite of it. Not by fighting Saul, but by trusting that what was his was his. Now, same goes for Joseph, who goes to bed one night a prisoner and the next wakes up prime minister. All through humility, not through posturing or grandstanding. Or let us use even a more recent example. What of the late President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi? Moi, as a vice president, suffered terrible humiliation at the hands of Mzee Kenyatta's handlers. But Moi was never insubordinate. He humbly considered his position, and the rest is history. Now, these are many examples, and we could mention more that all tell us one thing, that there is no path to leadership, at least one that we can see, that includes fighting your boss publicly and undermining him. And again, this is not about whether the boss is right or wrong or anything like that. It's about the fact that the boss is the boss. And this appears to be a consistent principle across time. And unless this fundamental wrong can be righted on the part of the deputy president and his supporters, we wonder if from the good book or from any other authority on these matters, if there really is a viable path to the presidency for him. We also wonder if it is too late to show contrition and to reconsider a political strategy which appears in some to say, fight Mkubwa, or contradict him, or speak out of turn. However, we want to remind you, our opener, before you get all lined up, these are not anything more than observations, just things to ponder on and nothing more. And we could be wrong. We could be completely wrong. And if we are, well, I'm great at apologies. So to err is human. But either way, we'll be watching and we'll be reporting here on Punchline. We're taking a break. We're back with the sport after this.